running's such a simple sport where if you've got those basics and you build that fitness, it can work out in anything you put it towards. My dad runs, and so did my older brother at that time, and I was pretty inspired by them, and I was like, I want to be better than them. And then it developed to trying to be the best I could be and make it somewhere in the sport. When it's sport, it's always competitive, and you always want to beat someone. When you know someone personally, you've just got that mutual respect because you're both trying to be your best. You've got that respect for someone else, and that's what makes it such a good experience of racing others. I think I'm quite a good all-rounder, and that comes from just including a little bit of everything, but everything stays similar because I think it's all crosses the same basics.
Joe, for those of you who don't know you that well, you're a steeplechaser, you're a distance runner, you're a cross
Yeah.
country runner. You cover all the bases where that's concerned. Out of interest, what would you say is it exactly that inspired you from the beginning to be the best running athlete you can be?
Okay, that's quite a good question. So I started out in probably like year 7, and it was watching my older brother and my dad. So my dad runs, and so did my older brother at that time. And it was just watching them, and I was pretty inspired by them, and I was like, I want to be better than them, and I want to be. Um, and then it developed to trying to be the best I could be and make it somewhere in the sport.
As you say, that was actually one of my other questions as well, because as you say, your dad runs, your brother runs. Where your family is concerned, then, how would you say they motivate you when it comes to things like your competitions and your training? Like, say, if you have a bad day, for example, how do they keep you going?
So me and my dad, and not really my brother much anymore because he's off at uni, but we talk a lot about running, pretty much every single day. And if something doesn't go well, then we can speak about that. Uh, we like break down the race, what went wrong, and what we can try and improve on. And before a race, we plan, and I like to have everything kind of set in plan and in motion, so that nothing happens untoward that I don't expect, because that can cause things to like really stress me out. But so if we can like get everything in plan, then things work out well. So it's just that talking about a race beforehand and after a race as well, which is what really makes me excel in in the race. Yeah.
Yeah, because I can imagine, obviously, for most athletes, it's within them anyway to, do as best as they possibly can. But when you've got that family as a foundation as well, that must
Yeah.
mean like so much to you when it comes to motivation and keeping you going, basically. So that's really, really awesome that you have that to begin with.
Yeah, definitely. I've always got a training partner, which is amazing. Yeah, I can always go out for a run with someone, uh, which is quite motivating in a way of that it's not only about training, but then it's also just like going out of the house, just to have a conversation with someone as well, just as a way of socializing.
Yeah, I can only imagine that that can make all the difference. So that's in a sense, you're actually really lucky that you have that. And as you do so many different events, with the steeplechase and the distance running, would you say your training routine is fairly similar across the board, or does it change from day to day? Does it change from event to event? How would you go about your training routine?
I'll be honest, I don't, it doesn't really change much. It's, I think running's such a simple sport where if if you've got those basics in there and you build that fitness, then it can work out in anything you put it towards. Obviously, things change towards the summer. Things become more speed based, and I do like really short, fast sessions, which I wouldn't do in the winter. In the winter, I do hills and cross country. But on the board, everything is pretty much very similar. I think the cross country and the steeple are very, very similar in the way that they both kind of employ that ability to still put in effort when you're really, really tired, and to keep the concentration over changing terrains. And yeah, so they're very similar. So I think pretty much any cross country training will put you in a good place for the steeple, just as long as you've got the confidence to get over the hurdles. Um, and then with distance running, very similar to cross country in the way that it's just going over going over long distances. But I feel like, I mean, yeah, it's not to prepare for cross country is very different to preparing for distance um, on like the road or the track. I think there's many people who are very good at the cross and they're not that good at the normal distance, and there's people who are very good at the like normal distance running and can't hack the cross. I think I think I'm quite a good all rounder, and that comes from just including a little bit of everything, but everything's so similar because I think it's all crosses the same basics.
When it comes to the big day, when it comes to competition day, because you've done it for a few years, how do you deal with any nerves, any doubts that you may have beforehand? How do you go about how do you go about sorting that out for yourself, would you say?
So I don't know. Although I've been in the sport a long time, I think I've really only got to being in like mega competitive, um, like up there with the best in the country recently, and that would be, I mean, recently in the last like 2 years, I would say, um, it's quite difficult every single time. I'm not going to say it's easy to in a hard race to prepare for it, and that stress is very hard no matter what. Afterwards, during the night before, the night after as well. It's always very, very difficult. Um, but I think the best way to prepare for it is just to make sure that nothing happens that you don't expect. Because if something happens that you don't expect, that's out of your control. It's hard. It's very, very hard to deal with it. So if you're also don't obsess about it beforehand, because I mean, if you're looking at all your competitors and you're obsessing about what like they're going to do, then you're just left there watching the whole time. You've just got to believe in yourself and what you can do, and but also have some sense of planning. Don't go in there without no planning, because then, well, there's with no plan. If you prepare, don't prepare. What's the quote? Prepare, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. There you go. Yeah,
And that's actually really true because you can prepare for something for months in advance and then you can feel really confident beforehand. But then when it comes to the week of the competition or the day of the competition, like for a lot of athletes, their nerves can sort of like override that, and then the doubt starts to kick in and all that sort of stuff. So it's hard. Like
yeah,
you can be physically capable, but then when it comes to like your mental capabilities, if you're not, and like you say, if you're not prepared for the unexpected, then that can really throw you off. So um
yeah. I think a very good way is just to get in small little wins each time. So, um, in your preparation, you just tick. It's like a tick list. You get everything off. You make sure you get your nutrition the night before. That's one tick. The next tick, you get a good warm up in. You get your drills in. You get your water. You get your food. You get everything ready so that you're off to get a good race. Because just making sure that once you've done something, you get that little dopamine hit, and you're like, yeah, I've got this. So like, it's like getting ready when you get ready for bed. You've got your little routine. It's like having a routine is very, very useful. Yeah,
yeah, 100%. But with this past year you've had, I know you've had some competitions that you've been particularly proud of. I know for it was the English Schools Cross Country Championship, wasn't it, that you were particularly happy with? Um, so for things like that, where you're really happy with a competition, you're really happy with how you performed on the day. What would you define as a successful competition? Like, what would you say makes you happiest once you've completed something?
what really made me so happy about like the English Schools Cross Country was that I went in there kind of because the week before was intercounties, and um, I went in there with quite a bit of confidence, and it was a bit of a bit humbling because I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna go for top five, and then I end up getting um just off the top 10. And so I went into the English schools with not that big of a goal, but then obviously I ended up being top 10 bottom year, which was put me second in my year, which was like insane. So it just showed that I was so much better than last week. And that obviously wasn't in a difference in fitness. Or it could have been a difference in the race and the terrain, because in cross country it's very like things are very different compared to like if it's a different course, it can really impact for a different person. But I think really it was just doing the race in a different way. I went off very quick for the intercounties. I went off a bit more conservatively and got in a nice pack. Was very, very motivated for the English school. So I was proud of myself for being that motivated and pushing on to the finish. And yeah, that's what made me so proud.
And as you should be, as you should be. So post that competition, have you had any other competitions this season that you've been particularly happy with? Maybe over these past few months or past few weeks, even.
The summer's been a bit of a trouble recently because I came down with a chest infection in the beginning of the summer, so I missed quite a bit of it, and still trying to gain a bit of fitness back from that. But I had a Watford race, 3,000, around 8:35, which was decent, and that was quite. I'd say that was quite. I was quite proud of that. Um, I might have. I don't know where I came in the race, but it was. I was proud of the way that I sat in and then had quite a quick finish and was. I was surrounded by quite a few people that I race often, and that was nice to be surrounded by people that you know, and especially from the youth talent program which I'm in, and it's more like although you're racing each other and your rivals, in this sport, it's like you're also friends, but it's not. It doesn't ever get to a point where, like in other sports, where things are violent and it's like everyone's so nice in athletics. Yeah, and so I've enjoyed. Um, what else? I've done a few steeples. Tried to really put myself into the steeple this year, and I've really enjoyed that. I'd say. And there was a mile not long ago, which I raced with my dad in that. I was like, he beat me by like 2 seconds, but it was like a really slow start, and then we like kind of all sprinted off in the final bit because there was like prize money on the line, so everyone took it off really slow. So like a 60 last lap, and we're all sprinting. It was quite fun to be in that race against my dad, and like I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna beat him, I'm gonna get him, I'm gonna get him. I didn't in the end, but I was still pretty proud of it.
You say you're pretty proud of it, but deep down, were you a little bit disappointed?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I wish I could
And on the
have.
point you just made, actually, with you saying how it's nice to be competing alongside your friends and just competing around people that you know. Um, how did you find that to begin with? Because obviously you are competing against your friends. So how do you manage to recognize that obviously you've got your friends in the same competition as you, but then you've still got to realize that you're competing against them and ultimately it is a competition. Like how do you go about that, would you say?
I mean, I don't think it really changes. I think when it's sport, it's always competitive and you always want to beat someone. Obviously, you can keep that. Obviously, it's definitely best to keep that to yourself that you really want to beat that person. Um, like that's not a nice thing to say to people, but everyone's got it and everyone wants to beat everyone. And there's always going to be that competition, even though it's friendly. It's a friendly competition and it's rivals and it pushes people on to get better. Um, but it's not it. I mean, it never gets really violent in athletics. I've never really came across anyone who's really that I know that's bad. I've come across people who are, who are absolutely horrible who I don't know, and I've raced against them, but no one that I know personally. Um, when you know someone personally, you've just got that mutual respect, and there's a lot of that in in athletics because everyone is like trying to be their best, and that conflicts between both, but because you're both trying to be your best, you've got that respect for someone else, and um, that's what makes it such a good experience of racing others.
We can't not do this interview without talking about your podcast, Joe. We can't not do it. So
Okay. Yeah.
so the Taking the Tape podcasts, and that's with Sam Plummer. How did that come about?
It came about because I mean, me and Sam are, as we were talking about beforehand, massive rivals, and um, we wasn't at the same club. We are now, but we was at different clubs, and we'd race each other in the cross country. And he's a bit better than me at cross country, and I'm better than him at track. So it's always this big like we're always racing each other. I'm always behind him in cross country, sitting there like hoping that I can out sprint him. Um, doesn't usually come, but I mean one day it will, hopefully. Um, so yeah, obviously we saw that we were both like some of the best athletes out there in the country, and we were like, oh my god, we've got so many connections, we know so many people, and everyone's so lovely. Um, there's all these people who are so talented, and they're doing so well, and they're the future. And if they're not highlighted, um, then they're not going to want to make the future. They're not going to want to become pro athletes because like that's just not a thing that kids really grow up and want to be. They don't want to be a pro runner. They want to be a footballer or something because, and that's not because the sport's better. Because athletics is such a great sport. It's because there's not this media attention. There's not these people giving them the praise that they deserve. And we found this gap in the market. Podcasts are massive right now, and everyone's making a running podcast. Everyone's interviewing all the top athletes, but no one's interviewing the younger athletes who are the people who really need it. Because if you're a top athlete anyway, you're already elite. You don't really need you don't really need that ego boost. You don't really need that like highlight, but the young athletes do. That's what I think will make the sport a better place. So we found that then no one else was doing it, and that we could probably make it big if we did. And I wouldn't say that we're massive, but we're we're doing well, better than I thought we would, a lot better. And it just shows that it was something that was needed.
Absolutely, because I see that you're constantly pushing out interviews all the time. You're getting loads of people involved. So, and as you say, like, you're hitting that niche, as you said, you're hitting that really well because
Yeah, neat.
people are listening, people are getting involved, and for a community like the running community, I think that is ultimately what people want. It's to hear these stories, it's to be inspired, and just something that people can relate to. And I think that is something that you and Sam do pretty bang on, to be honest.
Yeah,
Um,
it's quite relatable. It's like the people that you're seeing out racing all the time, you're seeing them out at like your local EYL absolutely smashing it, or you're seeing them at the English school smashing it. They're the people that you're seeing in the interview, and you're finding out what actually goes on in their lives and what's actually happening in their training and everything else and what goes into that. It's not something far away, so far away and disconnected like the adults are, because it's like it's like highlighting amateur, but it's not amateur because these people are going to be amazing when they're older. Um, and also, as you said about the community, there is such a great community in the running community. The people who give out listener questions um every single episode are the people that we interview. They're also and there are also people who run as well. It's like everyone's connected and everyone's putting into it. Yeah.
So out of okay, so let's just imagine then that there's someone who's never listened to the Taking the Tape podcast before and they're just getting into it. Which interviews would you recommend people listen to? What have been some of the most inspiring people you've spoken to, would you say?
Okay, so definitely James Dargan. They should listen to.
Okay.
Um, he's English schools champion and like one of the I think he's like fifth best all time, and he's off to go to Stanford for a sports scholarship. So he's amazing. But he's just you see in the podcast, he's just such a nice guy. He's lovely and he's really funny as well, and he's really humble. And I think that there's a moment I recall as one of the best moments is he's got this cow he calls Jerome, and he says that the only reason he ever leaves the house to go for a run, he goes, "Oh, I'm going to go out to see Jerome, the cow." So it just shows that not everyone wants to go for a run all the time. Not these like really good runners. They're not machines. They're not. They have feelings as well, and like that's what motivates him. And if you can find your own motivation, it doesn't have to be as silly as a cow, but like yeah, everyone finds their way around. Phoebe Gill, um, just going to the Olympics right now. She's amazing. Um, and she's an inspiration to all, not just girls, but like all young athletes. I'd say she's an inspiration to. Um, and she highlights how difficult it is for her, how much she's got nerves before a race, and how that she's like crying before the start line, and it's all really difficult. But there's a way that she gets around it, and obviously she thrives. Even in it's not easy, but she obviously gets a way around it. Um, and also in there she shows how human she is as well, because she can wrap the whole of the real wrap the whole of uh what's it called? The Real Slim Shady by Eminem. I'd say Josh Schofield as a he's a coach, and he gives a lot into um more into the technical side of it, if that's what you want to look at. Yeah.
Yes, I do remember that one. That was actually a really good one. Okay, so that's your three picks. That's interesting to know. So yeah, I mean, as I've said before, you and Sam are doing really great work with the podcast. And I know you said to us way back, I think this was like Christmas time, a few months ago, basically, you said this. You said how you wanted to gain a sports scholarship moving forward with your athletics.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that still the goal, or have your goals changed since then, would you say?
That's still definitely the goal. Um, I'm struggling a bit with it, and to get the qualifying times, obviously they're very, very difficult. Um, but that is still definitely the big overarching goal. I'm out there every single day thinking about it, and it's really what motivates me. Um, yeah, that's definitely the goal. Yeah, if someone's listening to this, please. Yeah. Uh,
So what would you say are the next steps for you to get to that position? What are the baby steps, if you like, to get to this sports scholarship?
okay. Um, that's a good question. Um, so I think there's a lot of things that go into it. I think obviously there's the athletics, so there's being the best that you can be athletically. And for me, that would be trying to better my PB in the 3000 and the 5000, um, to get myself those higher up scholarships. So times like 8:25. But I mean, focusing on times isn't the best, but that's kind of how it works out there. It's very cutthroat. Um, but then also there's focusing on your education, and also making sure that you've got like everything in check to get people noticing you. You've got to like sell yourself as well. You got It's kind of like marketing. Um, yeah. So it's not all about being the fastest guy. You've also got to be someone who people want on your team as well.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, I hope the sports scholarship goes well for you. I hope the
Thank
podcast
you.
continues to thrive, and
Thanks.
just keep doing what you're doing because you're doing a brilliant job. So, yeah, Joe, you are awesome. Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
This was amazing. Yeah.